Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. At the moment, since we have a little time before Dana takes over at 1 o'clock chairing the session, we're going to go to the administration articles. So, Chris, you continue on. I think we left off at Article 34, which is the next one.
Yes, we did.
Which is a CPC article, I believe.
Yes, we did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I don't know if this mic actually sounds like it's on or not, but on the West Harwich School, the rehab and preservation, this was actually, you guys did take a vote on it already under the CPC. I think the only reason why this was here was because there was kind of a joint application that the work will be being done through administration. But I think that's already been voted.
Well, we voted to include it in the warrant.
Include it, yeah, include it. That's what I mean by all these.
Okay, yep.
On
Dan had a question.
43 is, I'm sorry.
So is it resolved that this is a town article, or is this a CPC article, or?
CPC is funding a town project.
So it's a town project?
Town project.
Okay. And does it have a committee or anything, or this is?
It's going to have a volunteer component to it, but
Okay,
it's going to be overseen by engineering.
okay.
Peter
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael.
or Dana, I'm not sure who's in charge.
I'm in charge, so 1 o'clock,
I wanted to get a little clarification on it being a town project, because it didn't come forward to us to begin with as a town project. So I'd like to know when it became a town project. It came from a private citizen, and they were allowed to kind of put some things off.
Article 34, West Harwich School.
They were allowed to put some things, delay some things so that they could get some applications, but we talked about it being a private, this was brought forward by a private citizen, not, it wasn't proposed ever to me as a town project. In cooperation with.
In cooperation with, is probably a fair.
Came in later, but is it fair to say that this is a town project? And who decided that it was gonna be a town project?
Okay, I think the way it started out was individuals interested in doing something with the building, that we had discussions, I believe, in the fall about how do we do it, what do we do it. There was an RFI issued for the property, if you will, West Harwich School. There was one respondent, if I remember, at that point in time. And at that point in time, my recollection is that Chris, or you, Dave Spitz was given the task of putting together some sort of an agreement, which we haven't seen yet. But I mean,
We have not seen that,
have not
correct.
seen it at that point, or at this point in time. And then it's evolved from there. So, Linda.
And I think the CPC, the committee itself, wanted to know what was the entity, other than private citizens, who were going to be expending the funds. I think might have driven it becoming a town arrangement, because there was no organization, no 501c3, no corporation. So they were very reluctant to say, yes, we would give money to private citizens like that.
There's no, at the moment that I know of, there's no equivalent to what I would I guess what I would call like the Friends of the South Harwich
Right.
Meeting House. There is no
Yes.
equivalent at the moment to that. And so, Chris, I think that you had, a town engineer was involved in developing numbers, et cetera, et cetera. I also know that folks are out looking for grant funding to supplement the CPC funds, if you will.
That's correct.
But I think at the moment, the way, at least you have it envisioned, is that the town engineer would manage the CPC project. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, no. It's I don't think the Board of Selectmen has voted. We haven't voted that I know of, but that's a discussion to be had. Jack?
I guess my observation on this one is that there's a little bit of, seems like a runaway train right now going down the tracks, and I'm a little uncomfortable that at the level of detail that's available today, that it's just premature for this project to move forward. Yet it may well deserve on its own merits at some point in the future to move ahead once more information is together. You know, to quote Linda Sabula, "What's the business plan? You know, what is the demand for it? How are you going to manage the fact that it's a historical preservation project? Because the minute you give money through town meeting for CPC funds for this project, they have to do everything according to the Secretary of Interior guidelines. And the reality is, what I read recently was that, you know, we'll have volunteers and, you know, we'll, well-meaning volunteers, run everything, get everything done and do the work where they technically can and all that. And I'm not convinced at the moment that they could do that in a way that meets the Secretary of the Interior needs.
Okay, my suggestion there,
So
Yeah.
personally, I think that this is, while it may turn out to be a good project, proposal, it's premature to have it on this year's budget.
okay, a lot of things are going on in West Harwich, so if you look at the agenda for the Selectmen's meeting on Monday night, it's basically one topic, and that is West Harwich. So we have a number of different individuals, or folks and organizations coming in to tell us what their plans are, what their visions are for West Harwich, and I'm sure we'll get into that discussion as we go through it. So that's basically our meeting for Monday night.
One last comment, if I may.
Yep.
It's also my understanding as a Harwich citizen that some of these folks have been saying they have the town of Harwich's agreement to this or proposal for this. That's not true. You know, we've not taken any kind of a vote as a town or as, even at this moment, as
Yeah, you're
the
right.
board.
You're
So
right. No, absolutely.
that's the runaway train part of this.
Absolutely, no, I understand.
Okay.
I understand. At the same time, we have some folks, and I think we all know that that building for decades has been neglected, and nobody else has stepped forward to say they wanted to do something
Well,
with
they
it. So,
tried.
I
They
mean,
tried to do affordable housing, Peter.
yeah, I understand. I understand. Dana?
Just one follow-up on the funding question. The 1.1 million original estimate is brought down now to 400,000, whatever, because they're gonna get, is the town engineer gonna be the one that gets the tech school involved with some of the building and all these other entities that we're gonna do some of that, or is that coming from the volunteer group?
Yeah, I think to kind of clarify, I think what today is, you know, the CPC has voted to fund it. So I sat through their deliberations, they voted to provide funding for it. So the question is, does it go on to the, you know, town meeting warrant or not? So I think that's really what's before us today.
It has to go on.
And that was already voted by the board. I think the second component, which is really the operative question, is that they did submit a response to the RFP, that a license agreement modeled on what we did in South Harwich will be crafted, and hopefully we'll have that in March for the board to go through. And certainly the Board of Selectmen need to vote to approve that license agreement, and in that license agreement, the determination of who's gonna do what will have to be worked out and agreed to. So it is a little bit premature, I think, because the concept is still being, you know, I guess, vetted out.
It's good to talk about. Noreen, did you have a,
Microphone, please.
that's Mike the phone.
But I presume that this article will have an explanation, that will talk more about the whole project now being 400,000 and maybe a grant being sought, or, okay, thank you.
Should be. All right, anything else on that one? Okay, we still have a little bit of time. Let's move to
The next one is Article 43.
septic installers.
I think if my memory serves me on this one, it's Mass General Law 26C here allows for a septic installer to be on the Board of Health. So there was a request, I think it was probably almost a year ago, to see if that could happen. So we did get a, Coleman and Page should follow up and say you can do it as long as you have this statute be accepted. I think that does preclude the person. He could be a septic installer, but he can't do work in town, if I remember right. But I think the law is that you can't even be a septic installer and beyond. So this allows for that exemption to occur.
Yep, okay. Any questions on that? All right, next one's 53, Ginger Plum
53.
Lane betterment.
This one is, the selectmen have approved, kind of going through the process here. We've received the petition. I think with the 50%, over 50% people from Ginger Plum Lane agreeing to do the betterment. So this just becomes operative that the board has approved proceeding down this course, so this would be for town meeting.
Okay. All right,
The,
Chase and Hartsburg Libraries, I think we all know about those. It's
Yeah, the
an
next
annual-
three are kind of standard ones.
Dana has his favorite question about this one, comment.
16-inch pipes?
On your rack up, this one and the next two, you don't have those in there as coming from available, or free cash,
They should be
Yeah.
on there.
that you have 'em on, you haven't put them into your total yet, or at least unless it was done in the last revamp, but, the last one I
Well,
looked at,
in
it
the
had them
bud-
on there, but you didn't have them racked up as allocated money towards them, and it makes me nervous because they are gonna get their money.
Yeah, no. Actually, in the budget, what we did in the budget message, we grouped them all together, so it was 48,000. So it looks a little bit, I can't
Oh,
remember
okay.
what we put in there, but
It's on
we,
the new one.
and then the one we distributed today, we
Okay.
did allocate that out.
Okay, does that cover
Just
Article?
wanted you to know I checked the one from
All right,
yesterday.
does that cover Article 55 as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, that covers the next three there, so it would be 54, 55, and 56.
All right, any questions on those? Okay, 59, Cemetery Department. property.
59, Robin Kelly was gonna come in and kind of explain that, so I anticipate seeing her around 4:15.
Okay, we'll hold
Okay.
that,
So
yeah.
do you wanna hold that?
That's a pet cemetery?
The pet cemetery.
Pet cemetery, your favorite topic, okay. Revolving fund authorizations,
The revolving fund, that's pretty much the standard language. I think that there was a request on the golf to increase their amount from 200 to 250, and also to change the description to include the clubhouse, including the kitchen area, because we need to do work on the kitchen area.
okay, Noreen?
Are any of the other spending limits, have they changed? I didn't look at last year's.
I don't think so. I should double check, but I think the only one that changed that I remember in our budget meetings with people was the golf.
That's my recollection as well. Linda?
I think we're still missing the ADA.
We'll double check and make sure we get it in there.
Well, it's not here now,
I know, it was there.
because I think I had talked to you about the Albro House and ADA got left off, but ADA still needs to be added to
The
this.
Gremlin?
Yeah.
It was there and now it's not.
Okay, all right, we gotta put it back in. Angela?
Waterways, we're gonna wait to special town meeting to deal with.
Which waterways?
Which water
Talking
ones?
about,
The two requests to change the funds, the wording in the funds. I thought we had a discussion about
You talking about Matt's?
it. Yeah,
Well,
no? Well, this is the revolving funds.
Yeah.
well, there's a request.
Microphone.
if you could use the microphone, that's all.
Sorry. I believe there was a request that Matt put in to change the wording. I don't have it with me, but to change the wording on the revolving funds, two of them, and I thought we had had a conversation about that. and he-
He had items in there about proposed charter changes, I think, words
Yeah,
in the charter.
I think, Angela, and it's kind of jogging my memory, I think he's right. Matt did have two involving the charter, those have been passed on about the capital outlay committee and such. But I think he also wanted to have some corrective language to the waterways. And I'll have to go back through
let's check
and
it.
try to find that. I'm not recalling that.
It's
off the top of my head.
basically corrective language rather than
Well,
anything
let's
else.
check it.
But I don't think those have ever been revolving funds. Two of them are receipts reserved, the other one is the half of
Maybe
the, I don't think they're revolving funds in
Well, they
title.
are.
I think you're right.
They're both receipt reserved.
All right, but let's
receipt
check,
reserves
let's
ones.
check the status of it. Okay, stabilization fund 62,
Stabilization fund, this year, the plan has, you'll see in the most recent with Link providing the information that we're 187,000. We adjusted the number on snow and ice deficit. I had 500,000 in there. So now I targeted 250,000, assuming we may have a little bit of winter left. And then the stabilization went to 1.25 in the, so I adjusted that number up. And that will be the idea as we head towards town meeting. Whatever we don't use for snow and ice goes into stabilization.
and I would hope everybody supports increasing our stabilization fund.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's your warrant, I have no question about that, but in terms of the numbering sequence of all this type of stuff, having, usually the snow and ice question is in the special, because that's this year's money. But you might want to think about moving that back near this article, so that once we do one, we can do the next one kind of deal, instead of having it up in the middle of all the budgets.
I think a
didn't
couple
know if there
years,
was,
I think a couple years ago, we did it up front. That's why we just put it back in.
it's up to you, whatever you want to do, but it just seems odd being in the middle of the operating budgets.
Okay,
Either way, we gotta pay it.
All right, so we're trying to finish these up before it gets to 1 o'clock. So Article 63, the OPEB.
63 is OPEB. We have in the plan 300,000 going into the OPEB trust fund. We do have in the health insurance budget each year 100,000, so that continues to be in there. So we are beginning to seriously populate that.
Okay.
And then prior year bills, actually, I think I had mentioned this to you, Mr. Chairman, that we do have a situation where we have a obligation of the town from a retired firefighter where there may be some medical bills that are out of fiscal year that we may have to pay. The town accepted, I think it's 41-100B, which any costs above and beyond are the obligation of the town. We are working on trying to figure out what those numbers are and come up with a better number total to bring, but that is something that is on the horizon at this point. We are attempting to get the bills paid through other sources, through, i.e. the insurance company instead of the town. But if we're unsuccessful in that, then it would be a prior year bill.
Any idea how much?
Order of magnitude, probably
Yeah.
20,000.
Okay. Ed?
Well, just to follow up on something Dana raised about snow and ice. He's right, we used to always do it out of the special, so it could be paid and balanced up in that calendar year. If we do it out of the annual, technically the transfer can't happen until after, to the beginning of the next
So
fiscal
July
year.
1, correct.
And
I'll-
which
I'll double check.
Leaves us out of balance going out of the current fiscal year.
Yep, I understand.
I'll double check. It's a good question.
Okay, thank you, you got through those. So it's 1 o'clock exactly. And so I'm turning the microphone, the magic microphone over to Dana.
Okay,
Can we make a motion that Peter continue?
you can do that if you want to. We're not gonna change anything, Angelo.
I got a second over there.
Okay, so,
Take a nap.
now my blinker's on, I can only see this way now. No.
Great, I don't have to ask any questions.
We're gonna start with our town treasurer collector. And because you missed all the morning stuff, we've been doing things differently this year. We're asking to review your articles first, and then we're going to go into budgets after that, and you have no articles.
Right.
So that makes that part really, really easy.
Yep, we're done.
And we'll talk about your budget. So,
The treasurer's budget really hasn't changed. It may have gone down a little bit in salary and wages just because of the staffing changes. So really, the biggest thing that changed, I would say, would be the health insurance. And that kind of is what it is. The rates went up. Most of our Medicare people are in Blue Cross Medics, and that went up about 7%. And pretty much the active plans went up, average 9.5%. So it's pretty high, but it is what it is.
expenses?
My expenses?
Yeah.
No, they're level funded.
Just maybe one thing to add to the health insurance discussion. I think that we certainly had a very high increase, and I appreciate that, Amy, what we decided to do this year was to go back through and double check our head count. Let's make sure that we have who we say we have, instead of just taking the gross number and putting 10% on there, which would be expensive, obviously. We decided to go in and take a look at the head count. And the head count had stabilized, and we were kind of estimating a lot more increases in terms of that. So we were able to kind of moderate the budget adjustment. And to the point that will be coming up, I'm sure, that in the new positions, we did allocate some money in there to cover the new positions that are in the budget. So we slated probably 2 or 3 people, or no, 3 or 4 people coming on, and we have 2 new people in the budget. So that's been accounted for in the health insurance, in the health insurance budget.
And we're now beyond the 3-year window of elected positions that have come out over the years.
I think that's had a factor in decreasing some of them. I would say that there's been a fair amount of those that they officially retired, so they went from being in the active plans to being in the retired plans, so the savings was somewhat muted.
Questions? Anyone? Angelo?
Thank you very
The
much.
arrow's
for-
pointing that way, but I'm
Thank
going to
you very much.
recognize you first, because you're the only one with a hand up.
Just a question on your point number 7, you indicate that postage rates may increase, which is obviously a possibility. Before the water commissioners indicated that, or the department had indicated that they may very well be going to quarterly billing for them. If that's possible, can you guys work together and maybe use one envelope?
And bill at the same time?
I don't know if it works, and I don't know what the costs are.
I don't think the people would be too happy,
I
but,
think it's worth a meeting.
yeah, we could try.
That's a lot of money,
Yeah.
postage.
The postage is a lot of money, yeah.
Well, we'll start with the vehicle excise tax. I get 4 of them mailed to me. And it would be nice if they were all on a bill, but I think that comes from the state, and, yeah, if I get down to 1 car.
I burned down half mine, you know?
Yeah, you could do that too. But we still end up with multiple bills from multiple systems, so is it so much a what we would like to have happen, or is it general law that dictates that all the excise tax bills come through individuals?
Yeah,
I
well, they
didn't-
come from the RMV.
Yeah.
So, right, so I don't know, I mean,
I
we
w-
wouldn't be able to do anything on our end, it would have to be a change at the RMV.
Angela,
I wasn't talking about excise tax, I said
That
property
was an
tax,
example.
because
Yeah.
that comes out at a set time.
Noreen,
But even though they come from the RMV, they go through.
Microphone,
the
please.
PKS or whatever.
Right.
And I think they can search and group them by address they're being mailed to.
They
So it would
should be
4 separate.
collated. If the billing address and name is exactly the same, they should go in the same envelope.
That's what I thought.
But it has to be exact.
And for example, ours aren't. 2 are
Right.
under Bob, 2 are under me.
Right, yeah.
Now we know where the
Yeah.
problem is.
I'm the problem.
any other budget questions? Larry?
According to the sheet,
Rich.
increase, microphone. You're gonna increase your municipal lien certificates from 25 to,
We would have to talk about that. Most of the towns now are higher. Most of them are up to 40 or if not 50.
oh, so that's,
We've never,
it's
yeah,
open-ended,
right,
okay.
yeah.
Prior, when Mr. Ryan was here, I thought the charge was to do quarterly billing for real estate taxes. And I'm assuming here,
We don't-
possibly eliminating 1 or 2 tax bills. Is that the real estate tax?
That would just be mailings. Most of the towns that are quarterly don't mail 4 times a year, and that would cut down a lot on the postage.
So you get an electronic notification or something, or
You could, yeah, we could do that.
get a
And-
ticket, you peel off of a bill and you.
Right, you send 2 bills,
Yeah, I
2
get a
bills
tax
at
bill from
once.
Haverhill that it all comes in one package, and basically you save the slip.
A little
Right.
chip. There are a lot of, there are a lot of towns that do that, that have you get billed 2 quarters in one
One
envelope.
Right.
Okay.
There's a suggestion that they break up between the 5 selectmen all the tax bills, and we get to individually hand them to people.
I like that idea.
During your
and get
election
some
year.
feedback. Okay, do that too.
During your
all right.
election, you knock
Do you
on
have any
doors,
other budget questions?
check sprinkler systems. Good, sorry.
Anything else? Anything else? Questions? Thank you for coming. Thank you for the job you do.
Thank you.
And we don't have any more administrative stuff, right?
We do, at IT.
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to,
Here.
No, we had a schedule.
Oh,
Right.
got it.
No
Oh,
one here.
There's no one here.
Can we call him?
He's downstairs.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Noreen?
I have questions on the budget that aren't listed in the admin part, but that would not be for a specific department. Could we?
Let's get some of those in.
All right.
Anybody else can get your questions out.
Okay.
what you got?
So, I know,
Use the
Andrew,
microphone.
you've done some changes to the auditing thing, but, I see from the amount spent in FY '15 of 18,000 up to 41,000, so I was wondering if you could just expand.
Where are you at?
Okay, page 2 of the summary budget.
Did you have the same questions I do?
I bet you we do.
And we did not plan this.
Noreen, I think what you're looking at is I encumbered 18,000 from the prior year. The
I think the bill for the whole audit is like 42 grand.
Was 42?
I think so. It
Oh,
went up
okay.
like $2,000.
Oh, okay, so, oh, all right, so, but it says 2015 actual spent was 18,000. Oh, so you took the other 1,000 and put it to FY 16? This is what I'm looking at.
The next year, the next year budget comparison report.
Went from 39.
Do we have the same firm?
Well, it went
We ought to
from
go back to the other firm.
39.5 to, what'd you say, 42?
41.
Right,
That's
but the
what she's
previous
asking.
year, the amount spent was 18,000.
Well, that's because the audit wasn't done until
Okay.
after I got here.
Right, so, in that case, the difference, the other 12 or whatever would have gone over to FY 16.
Right, it was encumbered.
Right,
Yep.
so this year you've probably spent 50,000 so far, or?
Well, I haven't paid them yet because they're dragging their feet, so I want to
Okay.
give them some incentive
All right.
to get the audit's
All right.
financial statements to me.
Are we staying with the same firm?
They are signed for another year. That's up to the board whether they want to change auditors
Okay,
or not.
all right, all right.
What firm do we use, remind me?
Lynch, Malloy.
Lynch, Malloy.
Marini, I think it is.
Noreen? Question still?
Yeah, I'll keep
Okay.
going if you want.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So on page 10, the line at the bottom, the CVEC electric expenses. Now, I don't know if this is the payments you make to CVEC. I guess yours come net if you get a cash-out check. So is this the property tax allotment?
Property tax, the expense budget includes the
Okay,
property tax.
So my question would be, without this happening, the whole project couldn't go on each year. So does the water department have to pay a share of this?
I don't have page 10.
Since they share in the revenue.
Since they share in the revenue.
Good question, huh?
Good
Yeah, that is a good question.
That's
I mean,
why we
I
have her
understand-
here.
I understand the property isn't normally associated with them, but if not for this, then there would be no revenue.
Well, the revenue isn't associated with, the property that the revenue is generating isn't associated with them either, so
That's right.
that's an
I mean,
excellent question. Maybe they should be paying a third of this.
Or whatever
I
the
assume they
percentage
pay-
is. 43%, yeah.
I assume they pay a portion of all legal expense associated with any CVEC
They
thing.
do their own, they have their own legal,
Associated with the CVEC project. Over the past years, there's been many, many legal expenses associated with the CVEC solar project.
I think-
And I always assumed that the recipients of the revenue would also pay their portion of the expense. I mean, quite honestly, I'll go further, you know, for all the work that has to be done financially, revenue is wonderful, but to operate it, I really think the town has a case to charge an admin fee in addition, but I would start off by at least recouping the portion of our actual expenses.
yeah, I guess one thing, just, we only recently started to receive actual money from the operation of the facility. So if there was legal fees that were, 2 or 3 years ago prior to that,
Right.
that may be a difficult measure to try to
Right.
recoup. Certainly going forward, though, we'll have to give some thought to that in terms of how that would apply for paying the tax and any legal
Yeah,
costs.
yeah.
Legal costs have been minimal in the last 2 years.
Mr. Brown?
Chris, on Noreen's question, how much money could be at issue here with this suggestions?
I'm trying to come up with the, you said page 10, was it
Look at we gouge 'em.
57,000?
92 is what you budgeted.
82,100.
And
It'd be
so-
basically 43% of that.
43% be
So
$38,000,
50 grand.
40.
That's what I have.
That's nice, that pays for one of these added positions.
Page, I thought you said page 10.
Also might,
Pays for the raise you actually gave.
That's true.
Oh, I got it, 92,100. I
yeah,
got
we
it.
might be closer to our 300.
It's,
guess-
I
I
think,
guess
I
I'd like
think
to have
her
more
overall
time to
question
think
is
about
that, have we
Yeah.
captured everything, and we should review some stuff, I guess.
One of the things that when we originally budgeted that 92, that was actually done as new growth. So we did capture that in new growth. So the new growth was designed to kind of offset the tax payment made to it. So that's why I'm hesitating a little bit, because you really got two elements of the equation here. One is, okay, how do we tax it? And it was a new facility that had, whatever, $10 million worth of new value, and now we have to pay the taxes. So we did a direct, we tried to offset it by the new growth paying for the property tax.
I agree completely. It's a new industry.
Yeah.
New thing, everything has to be, thought out as we go down the road.
But that's a great question, Noreen, that
That
gonna
wasn't
share
on
in
your
the-
list?
it was, but, see, we're just stroking each other's back here, but if they're gonna get part of the revenue, they should get part of the expense.
Little bonding right in front of our eyes.
Right in front of, right?
Other questions, continuing on.
Page 18, the streetlight category.
Yes.
I know the town did some changes a few years ago, LEDs and other things, and it looks like the changes are reflected in the FY15 actual was 46,000. So I just wonder if we, if we need to carry the 80. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's, we've had a few limited requests, but we've had a few requests for changes to streetlights or adding streetlights, so I left a little bit in there just in case of that. But with the LEDs finally kind of striking home, and I think we've now had over a year of the LEDs being in place, the savings is much greater than we had originally anticipated.
So, see, now I assumed that expense was totally to pay the streetlight bill, so, but not, so it also includes
It's for maintenance costs
installation.
too, related to the,
Yeah,
maintenance
okay.
costs related to
Yeah,
it. That
well,
we pay
just-
that to Siemens, I think is the company that does
Right.
it for us.
Food for thought. My last question,
You're doing great, keep going.
on page 30. Actually, just something I had forgotten, so I just kind of wanted to say it on the record and make sure I understand it correctly. In the middle of the debt schedule, I see two items, middle school roof and high school roof. So, just to, I guess, verify, so we are paying $29,500 for the existing middle school roof, the same middle school we talk about, in debt, and $35,800 for the demolished high school roof. I
Yes.
just wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know when those expire, but I
Yeah.
think they're coming up on expiring.
But, question, we carry 125 for the cost of the middle school. Does that 29 have to be added to that?
No. One's in the debt budget,
One's
the
debt,
other's in the
yeah.
operating budget.
But it's still a cost.
Yeah.
What difference does it make? That's the cost of having the building. If we didn't have the building, we wouldn't have that cost.
One's coming out of tax levy and one's coming out of, free cash.
It's money that we're
Oh, it's
paying.
money, but
If we didn't have the building,
Right.
We carry 125
yeah,
operating.
of operating cost, and that's the number we have been using, I believe, for the cost of carrying that building. If indeed we're paying another 29,000, I don't care what we're paying it for, that should be added to the 125, and it now becomes, let's call it 150 in round numbers, to carry the building, that's all. It's, when people ask how much does the
Right.
building cost to carry, it's
We're-
150.
May I? We're paying debt service on a building that doesn't exist.
Yes,
The middle school.
High school.
high school.
There's also a middle school.
There's also a middle school.
I understand there's two roofs.
Yeah, I
We're
know.
also carrying debt service on a building which does not exist, which should have been, I thought, if you're going to eliminate the asset, you eliminate the debt. But
I think you ship the debt to the regional school, but that's besides the point.
Well, Chatham did that. We
it should have
agreed to
been
pay
paid off
part
when
of
the-
Chatham's
When the school,
debt. They didn't pay part of this.
All right,
If you sell the property, you absolutely have to pay the debt service off
Right.
when you sell it. When you demolish it but retain it, I don't know.
Believe it or not.
My only point of saying it publicly was I had forgotten it myself, so I just wanted to.
Thanks for starting.
it would be good, at least between now and town meeting, if we can find out when those two drop off, or how much is left in them.
Right now, if you want.
Between now and town meeting. Good series of questions. Anybody else want to follow that up?
What I miss, Linda?
You're doing good, you're doing good.
I have a comment.
Mr. Brown?
One of the things that, because of my background, I picked up on today was that there were a lot of budgets that talked about overtime and increases in overtime and increases in personnel, for that matter, here and there, combined with increases in overtime. And it just strikes me that in my history, and I said it during the Operation Review Task Force presentation, if you have overtime much above 5%, you have either a problem, it's with staffing, the amount of staffing, a problem with management resource allocation, or a contract that unduly allows for overtime versus other methodologies to get things done. And regardless of the reason, but those three reasons need to be addressed, the reality is that overtime can cause tremendous pain if someone comes in and starts cutting it back, because people build that into their life, whether you believe it or not, and whether they should or not. And we have overtime levels of 30% and above. I guarantee you that would cripple people if that dropped to 5 or 10%. So it becomes an incentive, because I don't want old Charlie to go broke here, it becomes an incentive psychologically to put your attention maybe a little bit elsewhere. Not out of you know, anything other than compassion. You're not trying to be cute or anything like that. It just troubles me. And I know there are people out there that would like not to have me say these kind of things, but I think overtime is a disease. And I don't know about Angelo and his work experience or any of you others, but I just think it's not healthy.
I know at one point on the board, I think Peter and I were selectmen at the time, we did that exact same thing. We printed, and I would ask for, can we get just a printout of all the salary and wage line items that have overtime? And we reviewed it, and back then, we eliminated overtime in a lot of departments and just said, you're gonna manage without it. In certain departments like fire and police and so forth, it was just impossible to address that big of an overtime number. But it was certainly something that we went through and reviewed, and I know for the fire department, Peter and I both went down and sat a day with them and went through every single type of overtime that they have, whether it be training or emergency or whatever, to make sure that the numbers were correct. And we made $91,000 worth of adjustments that year on that one department. But it's certainly, what Jack's saying is correct, that it's time to, I think, with all, I noticed the same thing in a lot of the presentations that we got back from departments. We increased overtime here, we increased overtime, and it's coming back into a lot of the town hall departments that it wasn't in before. It kind of disappeared from all those for a while, and it's coming back, and that just happens over time. Let's start looking at the causes again and see if we can't see something that shouldn't be there. Jack, again.
Every once in a while it comes back to me. Now, I've now been retired 14 years, so I just remembered the fourth one, because it's been that long ago. The fourth one is shift,
Differentials?
not shift differentials, no, shift arrangements. Okay, shift differentials too, but that's a bargaining thing. But shift arrangements, like, you know, 3 8-hour shifts, 2 10-hour shifts, 4 days a week, whatever. 24-hour shifts, and I'm off for a month, you know, things like that. The reality is these things all come together to create what seems to be an impossible situation. And you have 15 people who are getting, you know, 40, 50% overtime levels. That's huge. That sounds like a Boston problem.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and in support of Jack, I mean, that's why I brought up the assessor's office. When you have a customer service-oriented department, which has an open window, and which does, I don't know what % of its work with that open window, to eliminate full-time and depend on part-time, depend on overtime, and then you have, if it's 1 or 2 employees and one is out, you're down to bare minimum. does the job get done? I mean, the outsourcing is to, I'm assuming, external functions, but the internal functions, customer service, I find it very difficult. And that's why I brought up, do you need the extra person full-time rather than overtime?
Anyone else? Linda?
I do have two. One is if a town administrator would speak on the internship that is in the budget for during
Yeah,
the summer.
I was gonna bring up, under the administrator's budget, there's two, items that were included in there. One was the $20,000 for the, wastewater consultant, and then the second one was the intern at $1,500. The idea is that, at least in my past experience, you generally get pretty good productivity out of, kids that are in different college programs. But that is a new program. I did not, 1,500 wasn't a heck of a lot of money, so I did not include it on my list. I probably should have included it on the list. But it was a new idea to try to have some additional resources be brought in and be able to kind of tackle some of the projects that are being contemplated.
Okay, I see Foster coming up. Foster, you might as well come right up to the chair if you'd like, and we'll get started. We're ahead of schedule. Unlike the morning, we're running ahead on the afternoon.
Mine is might be quick, too.
That's our hope. Yeah, get Dana out of here, motion.
I don't think the questions are in your packet, so.
No, they are not.
Do you guys have the answers?
Yeah, they're not in our packets.
They're not in the package, I don't think.
Here's one, here's another one.
Three would be great.
Sure, why
All
not?
three? Here you go. Here you go.
Angelo has a few extra, I think.
I have a bunch extra here. You have it? In the middle?
What's that? Anybody else need anything?
Down here.
Down here.
Another one?
Yeah, we need one more here.
Do you have any articles to be dealt with at all, or
No, I do not.
does anybody, any of the other departments that you know of have a large IT request that you should comment on as well?
I think everything is in my budget. We've tried to move any servers or computers over to my budget.
Okay,
Yeah.
so talk about your budget.
Okay, well, actually, my budget probably is below your threshold. My budget is around $200,000. I believe the threshold for this discussion was going to be 300, but we'll take the opportunity to go over it anyway. So, as printed, the
I was just gonna say, I think originally, when we grouped the budgets, IT and the cable were grouped together, and together they're 400,000, so that's, the poor guy got wrapped up in something that he probably shouldn't have got wrapped up in.
Okay,
Well, just as well. The budget as printed shows an increase of 4.6%, but we are going to eliminate the exchange server that was in that budget because it's been funded by a transfer from the reserve fund. So that $12,000 actually being eliminated will make my budget about 1% less than it was in the previous year.
Is that in the hard soft, the 66,000 is coming down by 12?
It is in, let's see, there's a line of, it says update email exchange server, and it is in hardware software. And it's So, to go over the questions, I think the next item on it is the phased server, the differences, to explain the differences. The phased server replacement has been moved from what was a line item in this year's budget of $10,000 to the hardware software line. So we will be replacing another server in the subsequent year, but that line item has been eliminated, so there is no communication line in the current year budget. There was in last year. I don't think that shows on any of your printouts. but that's one reason, that's one of the increases in that hardware, software line. Munis has changed significantly because in the current year, we're purchasing some new modules. Those will be that's taken out of the next year's budget, so there's a significant decrease in the Munis line item of about $30,000. The support line has increased because we're buying additional Acela licenses, so that went up about $6,000 to $7,000 for those licenses. Okay. I think that actually covers the questions in question 2, the differences between the increases and decreases also. Okay. The rest of the questions actually are pretty, really don't have much, I don't have too much input on because there's no increases in personnel hours. I have no revolving funds, question 8. No pricing to address, no recap for revenues, so we should cover the priorities. I think the top priority will be to get to the number of Acela licenses that we need to support the Community Development Department. We need a new server at the Public Safety Building. This is an IMC server that they use for emergency responses that is due for replacement next year. And both in the potential deferment and as the third priority would be this document printer scanner. It's a large, wide format scanner and printer that the community development departments use, particularly engineering. The surveyor and the engineer use it. The one we have in it now is 15 years old, kind of beyond its life expectancy, so this year or very soon we need to replace that.
Think they've made improvements in 15 years?
I think so, and they've gotten, well, they're still expensive, but
I'm sure.
that item is $14,000. So that kind of covers the questions that I have.
Any questions from either board? Angelo, the arrow's pointing your way this time.
The Acela permits, timing question. Do you need to buy those before we have a program that's up and running, or can you just buy one and get the program up and running so we know it works before we buy all of the permits? Because there are towns who have gone through this permitting thing who own 4,000 licenses and their program that they put together wasn't acceptable to the world. So,
Well, so a license is for a user to use all of the modules that are available. So we end up buying them as we need to add new users or new people doing it, using Acela. Right now they're sharing some of them and doing okay with it in the departments, but as we use it more, they need to each have their own license. So we are buying them one at a time now. We've bought a couple more this year already. And this gets us to the full complement that they think they need. So I think the answer to your question is, yeah, we can buy them one at a time. It's not they're a one-year license. It's not like you buy them and you're done. You gotta do this every year. So it's not a big exposure.
so that's just for the internal use.
Yes. So
Have we checked this with anybody who we originally thought might be using it, like contractors and whatnot?
Well, right now, we're scheduled to do some testing with the contractors within the next couple weeks. So that'll be, that won't require a license, though.
I know. So if all of a sudden you determine that you have a real issue,
Yeah.
then we have problems, right? Never mind.
Yes, well, if we, That would be if we decide not to move ahead with it, or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It's been a difficult implementation, but I don't think I think we're gonna continue moving ahead with it.
My concern is, I'm not particularly concerned about the 400 people in here who have to use it. I want to get it to the contractors and people which was our original goal when Larry and I looked at it 100 years ago and didn't even require paying for it, but that's all right. 100 years ago, in our old age.
He do wear it well. Other questions? Go ahead.
Which way?
Microphone.
Close.
I have two questions, Foster. First one is, and forgive me, I forget the language, but off-site attendance to meetings when people call in, that's always failed us. If you looked into, do we need another budget item, or is there something we can buy so that people can join meetings through, in a reasonable fashion?
Right now, I think the policy allows for just audio, and.
But even that hasn't worked that well, as you know, to picking up the audience and getting it going. I was wondering if
I
there's
see.
additional equipment that we should be looking at, or, is there any update on that, and how to improve it?
We don't have any upgrades in the works. I think there are a few things we could do but some of them involve getting the audio in from the equipment in this room, or whatever room you're holding
Right.
the meeting in. So I think there can be some issues in fact, we have to pick up the audio from the speakers onto this,
Right.
onto the hardware that we use for the conferencing. So I guess I'd say I think there probably are some improvements we could do in it, and hopefully with the,
Is that one of the things you're looking at then, is what we can do to improve it, or?
yeah.
Is now.
Yeah. Yes.
Go ahead, I have a second question, but this is related to that.
Yeah. I was on
Microphone.
Oh, sorry.
I was on a teleconference yesterday with another board I'm on, and it was interesting. There were several of us that were calling in, and one of the presenters was calling in, and all of us who were calling in could hear her perfectly well. But the people that were actually in the room, because of her speaking into her phone, could barely hear her. So there's any number of places, and not of which all of the equipment failures are with the equipment we have here that's in the room. It's sometimes the failures outside.
Am I,
Excuse me, you done? Or-
I have one more question, if I
I would
may?
defer to Larry.
Okay.
Well, my next question is, and no one likes this because it involves personnel, but you're a one-man show, Foster. Thank you very much. But as we move forward in terms of wastewater management, the issues we have, is there a point that we need to have a second person full-time managing the web, updating it, doing all this stuff where we're more and more dependent on getting information out there?
Well, I would encourage that, and we've had that request in the budget on some of the years, not this year. I think about in the past 5 years, I've had it in every year, but we did not approach it this year. We did add a person at Channel 18 a couple of years ago, probably longer than that, the way time goes by. So Caleb Ledoux was added there a few years ago, and he has picked up about 95% of the updates to the website, and that's been a big help. So he does the content management, almost all of it now. As far as my department, yes, I think we should consider it, but it's a big step and requires considerable funding.
That's why I'm
so.
throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Technology is getting ahead of us, I think. And we have a lot of issues that we keep talking about communication, and to some extent, we're not taking advantage of the of the web, and others.
There's more.
Messaging, texting, all this stuff is,
Yeah.
we could, my judgment, we could be doing a lot more.
He doesn't want to go to any of the meetings, he just wants to call. Other questions, Linda?
This is for Andy. I see, we have no modules being added to Munis. Do you see, what do you see coming in the future? Any additional modules?
Well, we did purchase the cash module. It hasn't been implemented yet, but that's one of our objectives.
But you don't see any new modules coming in over the next few years?
I've only been to one Munis conference, and that was a few months ago, and I used a different software in Salisbury, so I'm not that up to speed on it. I mean, I do see some things, like the one that we purchased, so we can scan documents and start heading towards the
yeah.
paperless,
Yeah.
heading towards paperless. That seems to be the best one I've seen so far.
Okay.
There are some workflow ones, I'm not sure whether it's adding enough value to justify the cost enough. So that's
Okay.
all I could really comment on that right now.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else for Foster while he's here? Noreen? Microphone?
This one
Noreen,
might,
microphone.
this one might be as much for Andrew or Chris. I see the telephone line in IT was 0 2 years ago, and I understand you say it was eliminated in your description and moved to hardware, but those two facts aren't quite gelling with me. Where was your telephone expense in FY15?
I can do that one. There was a separate line item. It was Department 196.
Oh, okay.
And it was just decided that
Yeah.
it would be better to
All
move
right.
it
It
in
was
my
its own
budget.
separate
So
thing.
it
Perfect.
just,
I think we
Yeah.
just merged the two budgets. It didn't make sense
Right.
to have them standalone.
Yep. On a different note, I thought I read somewhere that there was possibly a petition article about how we handle our email
Mention that.
for committees or whatever. Is that true?
Sorry?
No. I just remembered, wrong town, sorry.
Chatham,
It's been a long week.
that was Chatham, I think.
We have enough problems. We don't need to pick up any from other towns.
I was
Any,
wondering why I couldn't find it.
any other questions for Foster?
I think we have a comment here.
What's the chances of getting Wi-Fi put into this room?
good.
Okay. I mean, remote participation, to Larry's point, 3 times a week I'm on conferences on the computer. You dial in and you look at each other, you talk to each other. If we had Wi-Fi in this room, it would certainly add the remote participation to this room.
Seems to be a lot of interest in better remote
But there,
into the
It's
meetings.
certainly,
so, yeah.
I think, from the board's point of view, they might be asking you back for something like that, for some sort of update on that.
Yes.
Is that where you're
Yeah,
going?
well, Angela's gonna be gone the month of March, so we're gonna find out all the good and bad things about trying to communicate and carry on with a remote participant, so I
you
think a
you
lot
don't
will
have to
come
get
out of
it
that.
done for March.
You might want to show up at one of those meetings or whatever, I don't know. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you for all you do.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Foster.
It's a little early, but she's here, but on the next budget item is the Council on Aging. I work for that department 2 days a week as a part-time employee, so I'm going to step down on that one and not be involved.
Oh, Barbara Ann, come on up to the table.
Come on down.
Welcome early.
So
So Barbara Ann, we've been talking articles quickly first and then budget second, okay? Figure 10 minutes or so for articles if you have any, otherwise get right into the budget.
You all know what had gone on with our lovely building with the email system and phone system fried and a bunch of other things. So you have.
You need to sit and speak.
Sorry. It's really directed to him anyway, but. So I have 2 sets of updated sheets for you because of our system. And there's really only one number different, but I wanted you to have the actual update.
Okay.
So I'm just going to pass those out if you can just grab them.
And again, so let's save our questions to the end, let her get through her presentation.
Okay, so article first, you said?
Yes.
The only article we have is our annual revolving account article. And as you've seen, year to year, we have money that goes into that from our programs, from exercise to educational programs, et cetera, and then it goes right back out to instructors. There's a $5 user fee that goes with that, and other than that, that's the only article we have, and it's every year. Mass General Law states that it has to be updated every year and put in every year. So you'll see that grouping of revolving articles. That's the only one I have.
We already have this one.
I'm sorry to be that paper person, but I just wanted you to have the
Okay.
right numbers. Well, I said we need to have like some good energy get over there between poor Carolyn having to deal with the flood and all the paraphernalia and people that go with that, and phones being fried and email being out, and car accident in front of the building, and then a gas leak. I mean, it's one of those like, could anything else go wrong? So
Very
we're
exciting
good now.
operation.
So, do you want me to run through the
Start.
questions?
Well, you want to talk any articles that involve funds for you or not?
That's the only article we have
Only
is the
article,
revolving.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any questions
That's
about
easy.
the revolving fund, COA revolving fund? Anybody? Okay, go ahead, budget.
So, you asked us to, I'm just gonna move this over, to answer those questions. Is that how you would like me to
Yeah.
proceed first? I know you don't want me to go line by line, right? So, last year to this year, we had 339,079.32. Hopefully you have the right sheet that's got that in green. And this year is 355,829.10, the difference being 16,749.78. And the primary difference, we have our normal step increases that go with the union contracts, et cetera. But the biggest shift was when we went to the nurse being 40 hours from last year's budget to here. So the rest is 2% COLA increases and step increases. The actual budget, the expense budget part, is a very small number. Last year was 64,668.86. This year is 72,696.80. And I outlined for you the 802,794, where that comes from. The largest piece is 7,500, and that was the blue folder sheet that has the adult day centers explanation. It's a two-sided sheet. I know the town administrator has had preliminary talks about that you all have chatted about. We're talking about an intermunicipal agreement with us and the town of Orleans and a few other towns as well. We have two different kinds of adult day center, and without getting into the minutia unless you want me to, these are the early folks. They are early onset dementia. They are older folks with early stages of dementia and almost any kind of dementia at this point. It's, they do a lot of work with nutrition and exercise. It's a place for them to go. The caregivers are relieved. A lot of the caregivers for the Harwich folks are working people. It allows them to continue to work. And we also are fortunate in Harwich to have an adult day health center. Two very different animals, very different products. One is a medical model, the one we have here in Harwich. The kind that we have in Harwich does not accept the people that Harwich has going currently to Orleans. So they're very different kinds of patients. The Orleans one that this money is about is the very early stage folks that we don't want wandering around the streets in Harwich, which you can talk to the police has happened quite frequently. We don't want them dropped off to any of our centers for us to, quote, babysit because they don't have any coverage. It's a safe place for them to go. And usually one feeds directly into the other. One center feeds directly into the other. So the 7,500, you may be asking, well, where's that random number from? It basically comes from the town administrator and COA director in Orleans, who decided when they started going through their numbers, they were seriously looking at potentially closing their doors. They have been very kind in offering transportation to all of the towns at a discounted rate, and they don't get reimbursed. No adult day center of any kind gets reimbursed, the full reimbursement. It's a flaw in our Medicare system and our Medicaid system. So the difference is approximately $20 to $25 per human being per time they go. So last year, for example, you remember the horrible storms that we had, one after the other after the other. They still have to pay staff, they still have to pay costs, even though there's no bodies in their building. That was sort of one of those slap upside the heads, we can't do this anymore, not this way. So they got together first with all of us COA directors and said, what can we do to combat this problem? And they asked if we could work with our town administrators and all of you folks to decide, could we come up with a number that each town could live with an agreement and still allow our people to go. The other option, if all of the towns, thank God didn't, but if they all said no, was to close their doors to anyone except Orleans. And we certainly don't want that, because we have about 13 to 14 and climbing that are attending now. So that's the $7,500. The program advertising we have had in our line item level funded for 8 years. We put in for $1,200. That answers another question, and the town administrator, assistant town administrator, and Andy and myself agreed to a cut there. We put in for $1,200. We cut it to $1,000. We use that for our larger programs, our hoarding task force, our housing seminar, I guess you could call it, or symposium, and the program that we do with the cemetery director, Robin Kelly, on how to prepare for your future. So the best way we use our Channel 18, as Jamie can attest, to the max. We do the free advertising, the papers, to the max that they will allow. But in addition to that, we try to do once or twice a year some radio ads as well as some paid ads. And that's where that money comes in. So we have been over on a couple of years in a row, so we decided to try and put in exactly what we really needed, and then agreed to the cut because we figured that's a line item. We'll just try and keep doing our best at the way that we've been going. Foster had discussed with us, for every line item, I always go to the source. If it's a contract, for example, with our copy machine, I contact the company directly and say, do you see or foresee any increases, so that I can say, per that person, they said it would be a 1% increase, so we know where the source is. And Foster said to add the $60. Our town nurse is, because of the increase, which is a positive, in her hours, is seeing more patients, and so it has increased the line item of travel because she's reimbursed mileage. But it has also increased a little bit of phone usage. She has a iPad that she goes out to the home with, so that you don't have a big bulky laptop in front of a patient trying to ask them personal questions. Mass Council on Aging is an organization we're required to be part of. We pay dues to them. They froze our dues last year. We didn't pay anything. And this year they had a 2-cent increase. So we went from 16 cents per senior to 18 cents per senior for a $92.58 increase in that line item.
Barbara Ann, how's senior defined by the Mass Council on Aging?
59 and a half and older. And as I mentioned, the town nurse, that 175.36 is her seeing more patients per day, and the travel mileage line item. So all of that together is 802.7.94. Before I go on, does anyone have any questions on that? Okay. So the next question, are you adding or reducing any personnel or hours? So we have for all the years now that we've had the chef, which is one of the best assets, if not the best asset to our department. Just yesterday, we had another customer come in who didn't know about that the dining program at all, and the doctor had said the person was quote-unquote emaciated and needed to put on some weight. They came in, had heard about the program, we signed them right up, and she is very emotionally excited about being able to gain weight and work with our chef personally. So it just, every day, we're surprised by something else that comes up. So I'm trying to be as fiscally responsible as I can, and right now, the only coverage that we have, she has 19 vacation days, 3 personal days, and obviously any sick time. And the only coverage that we have right now is myself, which I think all of you know me pretty well by now. There isn't anything beneath me that I couldn't do or wouldn't do for anyone or anything. But I don't personally think it's a good use to be fiscally responsible of taxpayer dollars to have my rate of pay doing cooking in the kitchen. So the town administrator and myself had, well, all of us that got together for the budget had a discussion about what could it cost or would it cost to get her covered by somebody at her rate of pay. There happens to be within the Lower Cape Councils on Aging a few per diem chefs that work for Orleans and other towns. And so I reached out to them and said, what do you pay people? How frequently do they work, et cetera? And they do exactly what we're looking for. They cover vacation, they cover sick time, and they cover bereavement in some cases. One of the people had a parent who died, and they covered the time that she was out for that. And they pay $18.19 an hour. Our $17.59 fits within that amount. And so we put in for $2,949.75 for a per diem chef to simply cover the time that the chef would be out. And that's grade 1, step 1, which in the new scale, if you have that HEA book, is the lowest or smallest on the totem pole or on the scale. Those two things, the two big items, the Council on Aging per diem chef and that new adult day center social model cost are the two priorities in that question 4 for us. We don't, everything else is almost pretty much level funded, so it's not, there isn't any big standout cost, but those are our big items for this year. 5, we already deferred the 200. There really isn't anywhere else for us as we went through to cut. If you look in our, I had like a worksheet that we sent out, and in there you'll see a number of times. I have level funded 8 years, level funded 6 years. We don't put anything in our COA budget, honestly, that we don't need. So to cut it would definitely be cutting something out. And we did do the 200. We thought that was reasonable. Recap of revenues and their sources. So we had a nice surprise this year. The two sources that we have, as I mentioned earlier, are that $5 fee per person per course, and that comes from exercise programs and other programs, and the donations for the dining program. Those are the two sets. And so last year, in FY15's end, the amount taken in, if you will, or the amount made was $18,081 even. And Dave Scannell had predicted that we were going to be $10,250. So we were pleasantly surprised that it was much higher than we anticipated. And the end of that question is, what do you anticipate? I would say at the rate that we're going, between 18,000 and 19,000, obviously no one has a crystal ball, but that would be our prediction. We would stay pretty much on the same path that we are. We don't have any pricing fee or any changes, and the revolving number that we put in is exactly the same, and that should every year cover us for a while.
Okay, thank you. Anything further you want to add before we go to questions?
No.
Rich?
I'm good.
Noreen? Larry?
I'm good.
Ed? Peter?
I just say, you know, you say 59 and a half is what a senior citizen is defined as. Many of us around the table that aren't in that category, and the kind of services that your team provides are just outstanding. And I just want to speak for the Alzheimer's thing. You know, I one time had an opportunity to visit with a woman who's the caregiver for a person who's taking advantage of this service. And literally, the woman was in tears when she got talking about it, because having Alzheimer's patient changes your entire relationship with your spouse. As she said to me, you know, it isn't the same person that I've known all these years, 40-some-odd years, or whatever it was. It's a different person now, and I have to deal with it. But that program gave her the opportunity to have that relief valve.
Absolutely.
She actually got a little bit of time for herself, but mostly it was, yeah, I can go shopping now, and I don't have Fred or Joe or whatever with me, and I can get some things done fairly efficiently so that I can spend more quality time with him. So I think it's just fantastic that that program goes on, and it's definitely worth funding.
It's huge. Thank you for saying that, Peter. What we try to tell caregivers, the other piece that Harwich in particular has that's wonderful is we have a very awesome support group that many of you have joined me on the walk in memory of my dad, and the money from that walk helps this support group be paid for, so it's free to the caregivers. And it's not your typical caregiver comes in and vents and gets some advice. It's half go to a nurse who are the caregivers, and the other nurse that comes stays with the patients. So they all come to our building. They're all right next door to each other. There's no worries, and everyone is being able to be served, which is really important if you've ever been a caregiver. And the relationship does change. What we suggest is to try like Peapod or a grocery service, so that hour, instead of grocery shopping, you can go get your hair done or get a massage or get something to try and help you in particular. We even have Reiki for caregivers at our center now because we're really trying to help them. So I do think that program is really important, and we certainly don't want it to close. It's a jewel on the Lower Cape that we want to hold on to.
Okay, Linda.
Having had a mother who was in one of these programs, yes, I concur.
Michael? I'm good. Angela? If you look at the back of the daycare thing, it says there are 7 Harwich folks involved. Question for you is, how many times more than that 8 does Harwich really have on its hands that are out there in our best estimate?
Harwich is still, unfortunately, the 4th highest population of Alzheimer's on all of Cape Cod. And there are approximately 10,500 patients on Cape Cod. So I don't have the math quickly, but you know, we're a very large percentage of that. So it is a stone's throw into the pool, as they say, but we are servicing or serving a number of folks right in our center between the lunch program, my balance class, some Reiki and other programs. So there are a lot more in addition to this center that are currently being helped, but to Jack's point, there are still a number out there that we don't know of. And the more people that can come forward, the more help we'll be able to get them.
Good. Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Barbara Ann, and for the great work you and your folks do.
Thank you very
And
much.
for the COA board.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Chris.
Jack, you know, you have a few members of the COA board that I don't think realize that we went a little early, so I don't know if you want
I
to
texted all of
have
them.
any,
Would you like to introduce them? Just introduce.
Yes.
Stand up, please.
I have with us our chair, Adrienne Johnson, and her husband, Joe, and Ralph Smith, all very long-term members of our board and very supportive. Thank you all for being here. I was so nervous I didn't even look back and see you.
They had your back.
Literally.
Thank you for coming. Very
Thank
nice of you. Okay, we could do youth and rec, but first we got to get Dana back in here because he, you know.
I heard all the applause, I figured you were welcome.
Come on up, Eric. Oh, take your microphone back. Peter tried to steal it.
I see. Welcome.
How you doing?
Good, you?
Good, good.
Huh, he wants to talk about,
Mr. Chairman, just,
Yes.
we're a half hour early, and I don't know, are you planning on any of your board members coming,
One that may be coming,
really
and I
unsaid.
texted him, so,
saying that we're running early?
yeah, so if he's here.
I didn't know if you wanted to try to do a few other ones, if there's other items to give his people a few minutes to get here.
I'm not
okay,
really-
we could,
Have our separate meeting as well.
I'm not really relying upon him. I'm good to go. If you want me to-
Yeah, I'm more just worried
He
about the
has something to
posting,
do
because
today. Oh,
we
okay.
posted
Yeah.
it
Oh, I
a
see
certain
what
way. I'm just more worried about the
right,
posting
right, I
element.
understand.
If I recall correctly, Linda had 2 questions. She only got one of them answered before we started.
And that look tells me she doesn't remember the other one.
I'll think about
It's
it.
that 59-and-a-half-year-old thing. I don't know
That's
how
the
close-
early onset
how
thing,
close
right?
you are, but
No, I think I got a
Mr. Hughes has a question.
I have a question.
We'll get to you.
On the selectmen and the town administrator and the finance director's side of the board, if you will, we went and got the software, visual software, whatever I forget what we call it, town hall software, whatever. I'm just wondering, virtual town hall, whatever. I'm just wondering, based on the current budget, call it a draft that we have, are we able to now push the magic button and get a graphic that would show, at least on the budget side, what that would look like? So that then we could all, I don't necessarily mean right now, but I mean, then we could all look at it at some point in time and say, well, this is a pretty interesting way to break things down, and just give us some practice with that software. Is that possible?
Well, I've been reviewing the information, and I've sent a number of emails to Annie, and, we all know about the email situation.
Yeah.
But I was able to speak to her on the phone.
This
She
is
had
the,
a-
this is the consultant, or the,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
She had to make one more change, and I think I've got everything done, so it'll go live next week.
Okay, so we'll be able to see that.
You'll be able to see, well,
The budget
fiscal year
side, yeah.
17 is from the 5-year forecast, not this budget. So
Okay.
I'm going to put this year's budget in when it's finalized, if
Okay,
that's all right with the board.
this is software that gives you a, think about it as being a football field, and it's broken up into segments based on the size of things. So it will, for instance, will show the rec and youth budget as a chunk, and then you show another rectangle, which would be the, the IT budget, another one. All these budgets have been going through, including the school budget, by the way, would be in there. And ideally, eventually, be able to drill down on that to, find out more detail. But just as a start, if we got that one page, that would give everybody an idea to at least look at it and say, hey, does this look like something we're interested in? That's all.
Could we get one of those for our federal taxes?
I got a memo saying you don't pay any federal taxes, so I don't know, I'll get the IRS to chase you down, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is a question for the IRS. Anything else before we go on to recreation? We have them here, we have board members, and we'll let you introduce yourselves, and what we've been doing is talking about articles first.
Sure, yep,
And then we've been talking about budgets after that.
okay.
We have all the material that you've sent forward, so we know a lot about your budget already, but you want to take this opportunity to talk to us face to face.
Sure. Well, I'm Eric Beebe, I'm the Recreation Director, and
Dave Nixon, one of the commissioners.
so I'll start with our articles. We actually have 2 articles that'll be hopefully at town meeting this year. They're both Community Preservation Committee articles. They both were recently passed by the Community Preservation Committee. The first one is the proposed Article 37, which is the complete replacement of the fencing at White House Field. A couple years ago, it was brought to our attention by the Highway Department that it was really getting old, becoming a safety concern. So we tried to move forward last year. Unfortunately, we did not receive the money last year. This year we have. So it would include all of the fencing around White House, including the backstop, the home run fence, third base side, for everything. So that's basically that. It's starting to bow out on the bottom. People can get their spikes caught in it. The poles are rusting. It's just time to get it done. That article is for $57,128. The second article, also a CPC article, is our Brooks Park Phase 3 article. Just a little history. This started several years ago. We came up with a comprehensive plan of what we'd like to see at Brooks Park. And we started with Phase 1, which was $10,000 for a engineering and design study, which we had done. It gave us a huge list of everything and how much it was going to cost for our wish list and the commission's wish list. And now we're systematically breaking it into phases to make it costly and affordable for the town. Phase 2, we finished this past fall. That included 2 new tennis/pickleball courts and a complete renovation of the current basketball court. And those have been used a lot, to put it lightly, since then. And now we're on to Phase 3, which just got passed, and it's $188,000. It will include a new half basketball court behind the current court, also a new half practice tennis court with a new tennis wall. It'll have a 20 to 30 parking space T-base parking lot. to handle the overflow. A picnic pavilion, so that we're looking to book more events there. Weddings, family reunions, business company picnics, stuff like that. Also, we are looking to resurface the 4 tennis courts. It's reached its life, the surfacing, so it's time to do that. And this will also include ADA pathways throughout the whole park to make it compliable with all the regulations. So those are our 2 articles that are going to be going forth this year. In addition to also, as Barbara had mentioned, the revolving fund article to renew that. We use that for our large bulk of our programs, and it's money in from registration fees and money out for equipment, medals, coaches, referees, etc.
Do you anticipate another phase on your Brooks Park one? Is this the final phase,
I do
or?
anticipate another phase. We haven't really started talking about the specifics of the next phase yet, but I anticipate it would have something, probably a restroom facility down there, a small one, in addition to the one that's by the baseball field. Also an upgrade to the playground area. Those are 2 things that are high on the wish list down there.
Okay. Any other questions? Peter?
Can I just ask on the White House field fencing?
Yep.
Since the funding won't be available till July 1st?
Yep.
You expect to be done after the season that the Mariners are playing?
Yeah, I talked to representatives from the Highway Department. They could do little quick fixes to get us through this season safely, and then we'll get the work done in the fall.
Okay.
Same thing with Brooks Park. If we were to get the money, we'll start work in the fall, because we can't do it in the summer, that's for sure.
Any other questions on the articles?
Not directly on the article, but.
Any other questions on the articles?
It's capital, though.
Something else on a completely different subject?
The fields behind the new ball fields behind the community center. I know at one time the ADA compliant path around the field, we had difficulties with that. Has that been resolved? I haven't been out there in a while.
It's all set now. It's completely paved. It's wide enough to meet all regulations. It's being used quite a bit as well, so we're meeting all regulations now.
Other questions? All right, budget.
Budget. Well, our budget this year, we break it into 3 sections. I'll kind of go through it that way.
Sure.
The first section is our seasonal budget. This is level funded with last year. Actually, it's $40 increase overall. So
Where's
I don't know
that?
what percentage that is. But, this includes, as usual, we're not adding any staff or subtracting any staff. It includes 28 lifeguards, 2 beach supervisors, 6 gate guards, 1 waterfront director, 3 swim instructors, and 1.5 parking enforcement officers. Those are all the positions that are coming out of that budget, and that seems like what we need every year to get us through the summer safely and to make it an enjoyable experience for the patrons of the beaches. The next part of our budget is our year-round staff. Again, we have no additions in staff or hours. I believe it's a 5% increase this year to around 220,000. This includes myself, 40-hour-a-week program specialist, a 40-hour-a-week executive assistant, and a 14-hour-a-week program specialist. We have a lot of programs, especially now that we've been using the middle school. We supplement our resources with the revolving fund and hiring subcontracted staff, kids from the high school that we train, kids just out of college. We have a great crew this year, so they really complement our year-round staff and make everything get done. And our third part of our budget is our expenses. That's actually down, I believe, around 8% from last year due to the reallocation of money to Sean Libby and the maintenance manager. So it's down to, we're requesting $57,575 this year, as opposed to $62 last year. The only big changes in that, like I said, is the reallocation of the maintenance money. There's little amounts of money moved around within the expense line items. The biggest one would be we went up about $1,500 in our rentals and leases line item. That's due to more porta potties and more ADA accessible porta potties. We're really switching over to all ADA accessible ones at all our locations, which in turn are more expensive. We also went down to cover that change in the unclassified supplies and the otherwise unclassified supplies. Both of them included sub-line items that were sports equipment type items that we can cover through our revolving fund that get used in revolving fund programs anyway. So other than the decrease from the maintenance, everything else is basically the same. And our total budget we are requesting is $451,674, which, this is my math, a 1.5% increase from last year.
Questions? The arrow points that way.
What can I tell you? I'm looking at a report on revenues,
Sure.
and what the town administrator's report says is that it's anticipated that estimated revenue would be $346,188, which is a little under the budget request. But my real question is when I was liaison to the rec group, only about $5,000 or $6,000 or $10,000 was carried in maintenance. Is that still the way it is? So besides the maintenance that you just moved this year, is there still beach cleaning at 50 or 60?
That's all, yeah, that's all in the highway budget.
So what you would have to do is add $200,000 or $300,000 to your budget if you were gathering it all together.
From highway and harbor, yes.
Okay. If you did that, then you're short a significant amount of money. Is there ways to make up some of that?
Well, actually, our revenue, what we expect to have, totaled around 440, what we expect, including daily beach passes, beach stickers, beach vendor contracts, potential revenue and beach parking violations, as well as summer swim lesson fees and general fund adult programs throughout the year. There's actually, in addition to this, since I sent this report, as of this Tuesday, the Rec Commission voted on their summer beach fees, sticker fees, which will come to you shortly. They voted for a $5 increase in the resident beach sticker, which will add about $40,000 in revenue,
So
potential revenue this
in
summer.
round numbers, we're playing with a couple $100,000.
Yep. We're always looking for more revenue sources. We just recently started selling sweatshirts and T-shirts at Red River Beach. Small things, but we're chipping away. We're looking to switch over to more kayak and stand-up paddleboard rentals at Cahoon's Beach, rather than the actual tours. That wasn't as successful as I think the rentals could be. Other things we've been doing, we're also looking to add more programs. We're looking to add a fishing program for kids this summer. We're going to do a teenage camp. We now have a camp that goes from ages 6 to 12. We noticed the 13 and 14-year-olds feel a little left out, so we're going to get them in using the middle school. We're up for anything. So we take suggestions, we brainstorm, and I think we have a lot of room for growth in the future going forward.
Any other questions? Angela?
No.
Linda?
Question?
Go ahead.
Question. On your sheet, under number 6, you have anticipated revenues.
Yep.
$442,000. This may be a question between you and the town administrator, because on the revenue funds budget that I got just a couple of days ago, it says that the revenues for FY17 in the budget were $301,000.
I think part of that may be because the revenues for the summer beach stickers are split. A good amount of them get sold before July 1st. I don't know if that makes a difference.
Well, there's $240 in here for beach stickers, so I know that some
Yeah.
get sold, between the two ends.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the full year budget.
The final number that I had gotten from the highway department for beach stickers was closer to 280
Okay?
last year. We sold just under 85,000 in daily pass.
Okay?
That's separate from the stickers. We had last year a little over $20,000 in vendor contracts. That's the ice cream vendor. We anticipate more this coming year because we're putting out, it's actually out to bid right now for another truck at Red River, hot dog cart. Beach parking violations, again, that's a potential revenue. That's usually around 70% return on that, according to the police department. But we wrote just under $35,000 worth of tickets last year.
And that's still a question for the town administrator, I guess.
Are you Linda, a question for you. Are you looking at estimated receipts, or are you?
Looking at Town of Harwich general fund revenues, which Andy provided to me, actual 2014, actual 2015, FY 2016 budget, year-to-date through January 2016, and budget 2017.
Okay, so
And I
which,
see $301,750 as Rec and Youth budgeted revenues. And I'm looking over here at $442,500, so I'm just curious as to where the $140,000 is. So do
well,
we?
I know there has to be a gap, or there usually is a gap on some
Not that
departments on what is estimated for receipts and what is actual.
Yeah, no, this is budget, this is anticipated revenue of 442, which also, but it still says, if this is the revenue anticipated for 442, why are we at the budget of 2017 of 301? It's a pretty big difference.
Eric, is some of your revenue in other people's departments?
That was gonna be my next
Just
question.
expenses.
Well,
Be
yeah.
smart.
No, but the
Now, the
revenues.
revenue, we get credited with the daily beach passes, all the ones I mentioned. The only thing you could subtract is the parking tickets.
Who-
'cause
That's
those-
in the police department.
That goes to the
probably
Yeah,
police.
that's
department,
anticipated.
Revenue, and that's anticipated.
Right. You can't bank that.
But even taking that out, you know, our anticipated will go up again, because I think the difference if we do increase the resident sticker $5, will be about 35,000 more. So that'll cancel that one
So it's
out.
still a question, I think, to the town administrator of looking at that, because if you take out the 35,000, you're still at $400,000 worth of anticipated revenue for this year, and we're only showing 300,000 for FY 17, so I'm a little confused on that. So can that be,
Yeah, we'll take a look at it.
Please,
I
yeah.
see your point.
I'm just a little, you don't expect an answer this second, but something's missing somewhere.
The other two, the summer swim lesson program that's the only summer program in general fund still.
Yep,
That one was just under 10,000 in revenue last year. We're looking to add a couple classes to that. That's why we put 10,000. And the general fund programs was just over 5,000 last year, but with the way pickleball's been growing, I allowed for 7,500 for this year.
so I'm still looking for $100,000.
Yeah.
Ed?
Well, if you look at, in their revenues, the sheet that Eric, you did up, shows the daily beach passes at 85. The FY 16 actuals through January come in at 80,930, but the FY 17 budget is 47, so there's
Well, that's why I'm
30,000,
I was calling
35,000
mine.
of it.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question, Ed, is because this doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. And then the stickers you have in at 280 and they have at 240.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
you know.
Just discrepancies.
Yep. Other questions?
Oh, you raised the price.
Anything else? Anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's everything from me. You good, Dave?
It's a good job. We thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
You cover a lot of people that come here for the summer, that's for sure.
Busy times coming. Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dana, can I ask
Yes.
one question?
Certainly.
Probably to Chris and Andy. When funds are moved from.
Use your microphone.
When funds are moved from departments, say rec to highway maintenance, does that show up as a separate line item for each department that's taking that on? In other words, when I
Kim is
look
gonna
at
keep-
highway and department,
Kim is gonna keep track of that on a spreadsheet. It's going into
so
one
it's
line
not part of
item.
the line item now, it doesn't show up as a separate. In other words, I look at the budget and there's highway and salaries, 5011,930 is highway, parks, is that the recreational, maintenance piece of that? I'm just
Yeah,
trying to figure out, how do I track what money's moved out from a department to, so we can get a total cost?
I'm not exact,
That's okay. We're highly qualified.
yeah, I'm not
Pardon, you're talking to me?
exactly sure I follow the question, Larry, but I think there's a couple things.
My question is simply that you've done the proper thing of moving money from a department budget into Link's budget, because he's taking care of it, like was mentioned with rec, we've done
Right.
with all the departments. if I want to go back and figure out what the total costs are for a department, are those items listed individually in Link's budget so I can do that?
No.
Yeah,
In other words,
no.
can I tell from this budget what is being spent in recreation?
No, the
Since you pulled
closest,
some of it back.
the closest that we came is when we did the indirect cost study, that he went through and he analyzed, he being the consultant, analyzed, okay, how much
So-
of the harbor money for, what do you
So
call
is
it?
it a-
The
is
beach
it a-
replenishment went into that, that was like $75,000. And then how much of Link's crews were related to the recreation operation. So he went in, but that's the only report we have to
But you
get
took,
a true
yeah.
sense. We
You
don't
took a
do a
specific
direct
sense.
transfer.
You took a specific piece out though, right? So that should, wouldn't that show up in the other?
You do have a list
Well,
of what
if it
came out
was-
of each department, correct?
If it was an enterprise account, then you would take it out and you'd have to account for it that way, but it's not an enterprise account, it's offset receipt.
If you ask Link what he spends on a various other department, he has to go and calculate it, because it's divided up into fuel, it's divided up into people, it's divided into that. But he, a number of times, has put together a sources and uses document. But it's not visible on the surface. But he
can-
can tell you, call him, he'll tell you.
You can see we don't have many meetings during the daytime. They use, yeah, I can understand, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't, I
The-
thought we
the,
were sweating them, they
The
were
budget,
sweating
the
us.
budget, yeah. The budget for the curtains is gonna go way up this year, I can see.
And I covered
I can
every
see that
spot.
coming right.
I covered every spot except the back of my own head.
You lost what we thought, I thought we were agreeing on.
That's right.
Complete call sign.
We are actually scheduled to take a little break, so, which is supposed to be at 3 o'clock, and we're running ahead of schedule again. But we'll take a little break right now and reconvene. Try not to go too far because we don't know exactly what time we'll reconvene. 2:40? 2:40 we'll reconvene.
No progress.
Okay.
Shouldn't be that hard to